time is valuable and you should spend it with the people who you can help and who can help you. And there's some spontaneity there for sure. But I just think most people don't know where they're going.
Networking in a virtual world has made it even more difficult to build deep and meaningful connections. Everything feels so transactional, and building connections has become a speed and volume play. But for Bryan Wish, entrepreneur and founder of a mission-driven brand agency, having a roadmap of where you want to go helps you identify those relationships worth investing time in.
What are the little tailored nuggets that you can send to people to say, I'm paying attention to you? People take note of that because so few people do it. And then, and they're more inclined to probably help you, or they probably see you as someone that can help them. And you build a trusting relationship where you're not keeping score anymore.
People crave authenticity. That's why being true to yourself is key to not only creating genuine connections, but also building your overall career strategy. So how do you operationalize that to grow your village and realize your true potential? Welcome to Strategic Momentum, the pod course with actionable tips, inspiring stories, and practical advice from progressive leaders on what it takes to break through business and career inertia and understand the business of work. I'm your host, Connie Steele. You've heard the saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know. Well, in today's work world, who you know is even more important to creating the momentum around what you may want to pursue. And that means making networking a priority as you work towards your personal and professional goals. But unfortunately, many people see networking inevitably as a four-letter word. They see it as being incredibly transactional and me-centered. So what are the keys to building relationships that are meaningful? How do you create that operational path to move you along your journey? Bryan Wish is the founder and CEO of BW Missions, an agency that helps transform experts into thought leaders. He's helped mission-driven entrepreneurs and CEOs develop and execute digital strategies behind their book, product, and business launches. Bryan pursues life with a dedicated resiliency to discover, build, and grow missions that matter. Today, Bryan shares his career journey and his approach to aligning passion and purpose to build the necessary network to help you get there, but doing it fundamentally in an authentic way. And that path started with this feeling that he didn't fit the common mold, no matter how hard he worked.
I did never really feel good enough. And I think sports teams drove that. Having a coach tell me how good I could be, no matter how hard I worked. Grades that, staying after I remember could barely get past algebra 2 and physics. I was the one kid staying after until 5 p.m. because I could barely comprehend the material. I didn't like this system of grades and teachers and coaches and people that have put ceilings on you. And then also growing up, my parents got divorced when I was 7 or 8, and I sort of look at that and ask myself questions like, how do I not have to go through that? And how do I get my career right early? Not that there's ever a perfect way, but I had a desire to do something meaningful and fulfilling, make decent money doing it, and have a family and be healthy. And so I had to think about my life very intentionally, I think, from a young age. So
where did this understanding and maybe desire of knowing that you want to do something meaningful come from?
That's a good question too. I don't know exactly where. I'll say this: I had 2 incredible parents. They've been great for me growing up. I lucked out. Most people can't say that about both their parents. What I will say though is because I was able to just see their careers where they did well in the mortgage business. Part of me wondered if they truly loved it. They truly loved what they were doing. And don't get me wrong, watching my dad build his company, I think he loved the building. But I don't know if it sparked his greatest joy in life, And then my mom, I think loved what she was doing and believed in it, but also know it's not like she woke up every day and was yes, I get to help people go on the home journey and have a home. But I know she loved it. It was part of her core values. And so I because I saw that privilege probably growing up where, we didn't struggle for, meals and things. I was like, okay, it's one thing to make money and be decent. It's another thing to make money and like have it be very aligned to who you are as a person. And I think most people start asking themselves at maybe 35 or 40 after they've climbed up their first mountain of success. And they're like, okay, what do I do next? And there's a great book on this. It's called Halftime by Bob Buford, that maybe you've read or haven't. But, I figure if I'm going to do something on this earth, make it meaningful and make it purposeful and try and figure out a way to carve a way to, make money in the process to support myself and my own dreams. And so that was my constant pursuit, probably since high school. And I saw college as a stepping stone to kind of open myself up to create those opportunities. I had no idea how I was going to get there, though. I knew coming into college, I always wanted to do something entrepreneurial and really have that freedom to kind of set my own path in the world. And I knew that's what I wanted. I didn't know what that was going to look like, how that was going to take shape or form. But I definitely wasn't ready to start on my own in college. So I think what my focus was coming into the University of Georgia was get as much experience and internships and jobs as possible and really try and figure it out. And what I tried to do, and this will relate to your book and everything you've done, Connie, but I tried to kind of do some discovery work and figure out what do I like to do and where should I kind of pick a path to get going. And, the first part was I wanted to work in sports. And then I also had no idea business in sports had an industry behind it. And so I submerged myself at the center of sports business and said, okay, this is where I'm going. And I hunted down every contact I could find in college. When I was a freshman in college, I made a database of like 100 plus people from Georgia to DC of where I could get an internship that summer. And I ended up working at American University in their sports programs and athletics department and corporate communications. And, it was my first taste at the industry and I loved it, right? You could work with basketball and all these sports and there were sponsorships and there was money behind it and there was creativity. And so that led me down a pretty interesting journey for the first 3 years of my college career, from working at, in the events department at UGA to working with a sports agency called IMG, which does college properties nationally. I think they've renamed now, and worked with the Hawks and the Braves and built some programs for them that did very well. And I loved it. I tried to have, my goal was, how can I get every touch point in the industry, see it from all sides? And that was my plan. And I went and did it. It was like, okay, agency, great. Athletic department, great. Pro sports team, great. And then the last hurrah was creating a sports program for the Hawks that felt like my own. It was this grassroots marketing program that connected college students to the teams and drove ticket sales. And pre-pandemic was a $200,000+ program a year that I started, which is pretty wild. So, I say that because I needed to kind of pick a lane and pick a path early to figure out what I wanted to do. I had started to realize, this isn't where I started to look at the sports horizon 10 years down the road and say, okay, do I want to start a business in sports? I didn't think so. Did I want to work in a sports team, be an executive? No. And it just didn't feel right. I needed to make a change. And I had that inner voice kind of saying, you need to switch. It was between the junior and senior year of college where I was trying to figure out, I was asking myself some of the harder questions at a younger age, like who am I and why am I doing these things? And what's the purpose of all this achievement? And, it was a big discovery phase again. But it was a much more meaningful period.
Bryan always had an innate need to do something different. From an early age, he never felt like he fit the mold, but he also didn't necessarily want to conform. From his early experiences with sports, school, and his family, he learned that he wanted to set out to do it his own way, or at least in a way that felt right to him. That led him to parallel pathing an entrepreneurial journey in college, which started with his internships in the sports industry. Yet after acquiring breadth and depth of experience, he knew the potential trajectory wasn't going to be the right fit. After introspection and personal evaluation to determine who he wanted to be and how that could be helpful to others, that ultimately led Bryan to building out his own passion project, a writing platform for young people to connect and express themselves called the Wish Dish. It was a transformational period in which he had to figure out what was his why and take risks to make his dreams a reality. But he followed his intuition, which acted as his internal compass. And that was only the beginning.
I don't think I really knew exactly what I was doing at the time. I think I was following that internal compass, right? It was a constant following of the intuition. One of the talks and TED Talks I listened to when I was a senior in college or junior in college, and was the Start With Why talk by Simon Sinek. And as I was going through that period of, it was a hard period, but a period of kind of where I was evolving into a new person, that summer of the junior year to senior, I started to ask myself those questions that you just said. And then I started getting fascinated, what is my purpose, or what is the why? And not that I just wanted a compass. I wanted a North Star to guide me. And I see that purpose as at least having a statement, as something that can guide you. And so I was so lost, and I was so very, very confused. I didn't know where this was all going to go, this internal reckoning. And so I did reach out to Simon Sinek's Facebook page, and I said, "Hey, here's where I am. I have a job in New York after college with a great company, or I have this another path." And so someone on the team got back to me. His name is Steven Shedletsky. He's been a great mentor, and basically he took me through the whole purpose work that they do, and took me under his wing, and he runs their branding community. And I was so inspired and enamored, because it served me in my life where I was in such a beautiful way, and created that purpose statement together. And it was to create opportunities that empower others to discover and express who they are, so that they can connect in meaningful ways. And just having that, I'll never forget it, but I look at that sentence as an extension for all the work I do, the decisions I make, opportunities I take on. Does it kind of fit that bill? There might be some exceptions here and there, but for the most part, I stick to an understanding and use this decision-making tool. And that was an effective guide for me, because that was created from a lot of my life experiences prior, of how I navigated the world. So, and that's definitely kind of transfused into, the work I've done since. And so I think getting really clear, having some of those harder moments of adversity early were really important, because until you really hit, I think this is interesting for the work you do too, Connie. I'm such a believer in it. It's I do think adversity is required, because it forces you to face yourself in the mirror and do the work that, is hard and not a lot of people want to do. And at a young age, most people, I don't think, know where to turn to do it. So I've always felt like a, old soul in a.
Well, so then going through this really monumental period in your life early on, and being able to get clarity on what it is you're about and that meaning you wanted to create, would you say at that point too, that also crystallized this realization that entrepreneurship was ultimately going to be the way? Because you did, as you mentioned, you did have the traditional opportunities. You created them for yourself, right? And you could have gone to work in a traditional corporate environment.
Yeah.
But there seemed to be this push-pull and sort of maybe internal conflict, that conforming to that wasn't the best avenue,
right,
to be able to express all of you, or even to experiment in a way that you wanted to then ultimately grow into who you might want to be in the future.
Right. There's definitely some constraints. When I was doing the program with the Hawks, I was really inspired by it, because it was the first time I could create a vision. I remember I went home, I wrote a 15-page business plan when I had the idea. And the reason I had it was because of an organization I was leading and from the internship. And there's an event we did, and it's wow, here's an opportunity. Went and put the vision in place. And then I executed it. We did a lot of success. And I have a ton of respect for the people in that organization. But as I was doing that project, I wanted to really own it and take it on from there, and enact it and build it out. And then they hired someone to take all the relationships I've done and do all the things. And like, basically it was like, the middleman. Yeah, I learned a hard lesson, like don't be the middleman. And I also like didn't like that because, I put a lot of effort into something to see it kind of script away without like any ownership or control over it. And I was like, is this what I like? Do I want to put myself in this situation again? And the answer was no. And through that period of transformation, as I was doing a lot of that work, writing became a big thing. And I wanted to connect with other people who had kind of taken that journey on or gone through hard things. And so as I was wrapping up the sports world, work, I wanted to create a writing platform for people to share their stories. And because I wanted to share mine, because I didn't feel like I fit in really. And I wanted to find a group of people who I could connect with now in a meaningful way. And so it led me, I kind of followed that curiosity and that internal compass to get other people to share very authentically about who they were as individuals. No limits, no boundaries, talk about challenges and adversity, whether that's, sexual orientation and identity to depression to, a sports victory that they had and what that meant for their life to like a relationship they had with their dad. I mean, it was wide ranging, but it gave people an authentic place to be themselves. And I was so inspired by this idea. It actually had no brand understanding of brand.
And why writing? Why a writing platform?
Writing was always like the way I could feel the most at home with myself. And words were the things that always mattered to me. And, growing up, it was always okay to express. It was always okay to share. And I think that was really cool about how I was raised with my mom because like she made that okay. And I don't think a lot of men in their early years do that. And so I was like, writing platform, great. Like, let's do it. Yeah. So I leaned into it. And it was really hard to get the first 50 people to share. But once I kind of built it out, I was like, oh, a lot of people are doing this. Maybe I should do it too. And so I built it out and I thought it was going to, take off. And I had money in savings and I like poured it all in. And a year and a half later, I had a pretty robust platform. We rebranded it a few times, never the right way, but that's the story here nor there. And by a year and a half in, I was like, no money, literally living on the floor with my friend in college. My parents were pissed. They're like, what have we created here in this kid? I knew like it was a great chapter. I also knew again, like internally, this chapter is going to come to an end. Like I just could sense like there was another avenue I needed to explore. And I knew I wanted to start a business again. So back to the entrepreneurship and continuing to be free and liberated in my own like curious pursuits. I realized I went back to the drawing board and I asked myself, what are the things I need? Like what's on the tool belt that I still need to harness so I can go out and build another company again? What are the relationships I'm going to need and what are the skill sets I'm going to need? So I tried to find an opportunity based on the criteria I wrote down for myself. And because of Wish Dish, because I still was a company, it was my own now, right? And I was freeing, but I had no idea what to do. It was so scary to do that and take that on and, all the things. But it was a huge growth opportunity for sure.
How'd you overcome that fear, by the way, of just even starting?
I got the panic attacks. I was scared. I had the heartbeat. I had the heavy weight on my shoulders, the night sweats. I went through it all. It was just like, it was the process of doing it. I decided to do it at 20 years old. Most people decided at 40, I just was like, what? Now is the best time to do this because I said to myself, like, do I really want to do this when I'm like, it'd always be that thing chipping away inside me if I didn't do it. So did I want to put it off until I was 35 or like 40 and with the family? And in my opinion, like that would be that much harder because I knew maybe what I wanted at a later part of my life. Maybe most people don't. So I just said to myself, this is going to be a lot harder, I think, later on. And I'm just going to make excuses to start. Instead, like, what if this just becomes the way of my life and I learn how to manage around it? So I dove in head first because that's all I had to do. I remember I graduated from college. My parents left. My roommates moved out. And I pulled up this course online. And it was like, how do you write your business plan? I had no plan for how I was going to make this work. And like that, I was so scared. But like that, I just was like, I'll figure it out. I'll reach out to whoever. I'll get in touch with, whoever. And I built some of my best relationships during that period, personally and professionally, because there's a lot of shared struggle and a lot of people who really helped me, on that journey.
What Bryan calls being an old soul, I would call being an early adopter in building the business of you. He might not have known exactly what his end goal was, but he knew that he wanted to build something meaningful and not just connect with people, but connect them with each other. He had spotted trends by seeing what was happening around him, and he had created his compass. Simultaneously, he was preparing for change, embracing fear and leaning into it, and building his village. So next, he also had to build those necessary hard and soft skills to bridge the gap between where he was and where he wanted to be, which he happened to do out of necessity, as he'll tell us about next. But during that time, he was continuously refining the other component of his fluid career and realizing how important people are to the process.
Yeah, it's funny. I was probably had a couple $1,000s left in my bank account. I was living with my friend in Athens. Literally, like, we shared a space. It was great because he slept at his girlfriend's a lot, so I actually had the bed some nights. So it's funny to like think back on that now. But yeah,
you're a digital nomad too.
Yeah. That was the first part of my life. Yes, Couches and me were good friends. I kind of hit that wall and I realized it's time to find the next chapter. And so I wanted to build my next chapter. I knew I wanted to, where I really could not figure out with Wish Dish was like the core brand foundation of the company. I knew what I wanted for me. I didn't understand branding at a core level from a company perspective. And because to me, that is the foundation for everything. And if you don't get that right, you don't get anything right. Or you do, but it just doesn't all click the way it could. And it takes a lot of hard work. So in the next place I wanted the opportunity to learn that. And I also wanted to continue building my skills for content and community. And I also wanted to continue building my network of, entrepreneurial people around me because I was early on the journey and I didn't have a group of people that I like, in a big way I needed to feel supported. So I had to go build that community as well. So
how did you know early on that you just needed to create that network? Because a lot of people don't realize that.
Yeah,
even older, even those who've been working for some time, it's not something they think about.
Yeah, my dad told me growing up, he's built a company and he said to me, I'd be so much further in my career if I networked. So when I went to college, he said, if I tell you to do one thing, it's the network. And like, that was what I did. Like I learned how to build relationships and I think authentically, like not transactionally. And I think there's a big difference. And I made that a focus. And so I learned to ask for help, and I learned when people have helped me, I'm like very aware, and I always try and find a way to pay it forward, or go out of my way to help people who ask me now, because I think that's the right thing to do for as much help as I got getting off the ground. So I knew that was important to continue building that network. And when I was at that place of what the heck do I do next in my career, I found, I did what I did back with sports business when I was a freshman in college. I made a list of all these people and organizations to maybe I could work with or create an opportunity. Or, I didn't want to go to a corporate job. I wanted something a little where I could continue to learn and harness the path that I knew I needed to go down. So with Kairos, they happened to reply. And what was interesting is they were a community of a lot of entrepreneurs, younger entrepreneurs. And it was so cool. So it was just something I wanted to be a part of as a community member, not so much ever thinking I'd work there. But after I reached out to I'll tell you, probably 25 people, the CEO got a note about me from 6 of the people. And he reaches out and he's like, hey, I've heard about you enough times. Like, what's going on? And I was just like, I'm in Georgia and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, well, interesting because we're looking at having a Southeast division. And then he connected me to his partner in the fund named Ryan. And Ryan and I kind of hit it off. He was like a hustler in his early 30s. And, we just had a good bond. And I took a lot of the experience building Wish Dish and Hawks and the Braves. And I said, here's how I could build out the Southeast. And he's like, I'll volunteer. And after 2 months, he's like, you want to run the community globally? And that's when it was this makes sense. There's access to really incredible relationships. It was learning. They had a really strong brand under them that they had really architected over a period of probably 7 or 8 years prior. And it it would continue to harness my skills. And what Ryan also was, he was great. He taught me how to think strategically. You really think strategically in a scalable fashion with repeatable systems. And um, I was just, I got so much knowledge from that experience. And yeah, we helped build the community out in 70 plus countries and kind of restart it because it was dead for a couple of years, but had a good base, and put in all the new structures that would make it operationalized and processes, and to drive deal flow to the fund, right? Because it was a business for them as well.
At Kairos Society, Bryan was part of an organization that gathered together the brightest young minds and connected them with leaders who were grappling with global issues. This mission-driven organization that invests in young entrepreneurs, bringing high-impact innovations to market, was rooted in advancing the world in meaningful ways. And Bryan relished being part of that community to do good. But Bryan realized again that he was ready for another pivot, which ultimately led him to creating his unique career mashup.
And so I got to kind of the end of the road with Kairos. The new chapter was running out. Same process as before. Reflection. What do I need in the next thing? I didn't feel ready to start my own thing yet. It led to me running a book launch and a brand for a successful CEO in DC named Alan Gannett, and was able to really work on his content and his community and his brand and his product, and really kind of see everything come together. It was like the one experience where I was able to take everything from prior, bring it all together, and then kind of push it. But I did it for a person. And it really started to connect for me. And the book did very well. And, I learned so much. And what I learned from Alan was like how to operate like a CEO. He was very efficient. He was strategic. He worked his tail off. He was very strong in his systems and routines and his values, and really just took me, and just cut me up into just a very regimented type of leader, because that's what it takes to build a company. And so he really pushed me and refined me. It was a really big more about refinement and understanding how to live a life doing this, and beyond the skills he taught me about marketing and content. And so yeah, I transformed again through those kind of two experiences, and I finally got to the end of Alan, and I was like, okay, I'm ready to go. And so they started to end the experience. I got a website, and Alan launched it, and that was what became BW Missions today, where I saw a gap in the market for Alan. How do I work with 20, 40, 100 Alans at a time and really help them find their next path and something they're passionate about, scale their community, their content, their brand, and use it as an extension for all their other endeavors and chapters. And today we work with 20 plus Allens of the world, and scaling their visions and doing something really meaningful with content, community, and brand, and all the products and things that come after it, from writing their books to building their podcasts and all the things. So it's been quite a ride, but I do think this is a chapter that I'm going to live in for the next 10 plus years. I feel very good about.
I find really interesting this shift from you trying to identify what your personal brand is to then understanding how a company builds their brand, to then back to understanding what it takes to build others' individual brands, and then subsequently focusing as a business on people.
Right.
Not Correct. Entities.
Yes.
But really people, because it's clear that you're focused on the human side of things, and realizing that humans need to express their individuality and not necessarily be conformist in a way that you experienced as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. To build on that, it's absolutely right. I had no interest working with companies. It can be, I think, a bit, I know a lot of people do, and they love it, and they do that. I think for me as a leader and building a company that I envisioned, I didn't just want to be another company that was working with other companies. I wanted to really work with the people behind companies. Ideally, it would help push their companies or visions forward that they were a part of, but it was more meaningful to really work with the leader and work and build something that they could be really excited about and they could kind of use as a extension for everything they were doing. And that was great because I think the way in which we've built our product over the last 3 years with thousands of reps at this point, we've really been able to, I think, refine a product / service in a way that really brings out that full individuality in someone and lets them architect that brand and message and bring it to life in a really special way.
Bryan's innate ability to connect with people is really what helped him get BW missions off the ground. But that didn't mean he was an expert at networking right off the bat. He had to do a lot of testing and learning as he built his village. But those lessons in the end helped to shape his philosophy about riding the line between selfishness and selflessness when it comes to pursuing your passion.
I think admittedly, I've had to build a network selfishly, right? In times of need, right? When I was doing Wish Dish, I needed to find writers for the platform. Okay. But that process of needing to find writers for the platform turned into some of my best relationships. I needed to ask people to be involved with something I was doing. But positioning that in a way that hopefully could help them and give them a greater, pursuit. Or in that period, I needed business help. I had no idea what I was doing. So I had to think about okay, what's the problem I'm solving? Who's done this before? And then how do I get in front of them to get the information I need to do it? Again, those relationships have maybe turned into my biggest mentorships or even friendships are now where I'm helping them with things because that's just the relationships evolved. And so I think it's been this constant process of, okay, where am I? Where do I need to go based on the vision at hand? Who's done it? And how do I get in front of them? And how do I use content, writing stories, sharing posts or doing things in a purposeful way to showcase those people or to get in touch with those people or, it's always about thinking about where are you trying to go and why and finding the right people to do it. And I think that's allowed me to really meet thousands of just very interesting people because I've wanted to explore something. And so I say this in the most selfless way, but in selfishly, I have dreams. And so I want to figure those out. And I want to find the people who can share those interests with me and befriend them and then make sure I'm a good friend and advocate back to them. And so that's the thing I try and take with all my relationships where I either pay it forward two times back to them or to somebody else when they come along. But, I build relationships intentionally to stay on the path that I want to go for myself personally and professionally.
Would you say that where you started, because you mentioned that, you have a goal or you've had goals and based on those goals, you've indicated that you try to identify who those people are who have the experience. So did it start off with, all right, who in my first degree network actually has that experience? And then having the conversation with them. But then was it then the next step of, wait, this is what I want to do? Do you then connect me to your next degree? So tell me about that.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think starting out, when you don't have networks, you need to figure out the channels those people exist within. So finding those micro communities and neighborhoods, whether that's a Facebook group, whether that's a Twitter hashtag that you can go into, whether that's a website that represents a specific thing and finding the people behind it, right? If you don't have a lot of people to ask at the beginning, I think you got to do the dirty work of finding your way to build the relationships in the pockets out there where the types of people you need to befriend hang out. I think that's always the first step. And so then that you have to go outbound, second degree, most of the time to people who you've never met before. And that's scary, but it's also exciting too, that you're not just talking to the same people. As things evolve and you do build a good base of network and you have good friendships and people who trust, respect you and vice versa. I mean, those ideally become people who, you can always go to and ask questions to for certain things or ask them if they know people around a specific problem or topic, that you're going through. So, I mean, a good example, 6 months ago, we got super clear on our core customer, and it just like showed up in front of my eyes. And like, it's been something I've been trying to figure out the last 2.5 years. And it's been clear, but not as clear as it is today. And as soon as the rocks kind of came open, I took all the people off my email list and created a campaign, in a sense, to say, hey, this is where we are in our business. It's really great, but here's where we're trying to go and who we're trying to talk to. Do you know anyone in your world or people I should think about talking to that get in front of these kinds of people so we can get here with this vision? And so I was be able to be so specific, but I'd already had a group of people, and I've had probably 100 plus conversations, since that time. And it's led to so many really cool things, even outside what I initially anticipated. And so what I'm getting at is it's that constant understanding of what's ahead, what's in the way of getting there, and who are the people to help. And then more tactically, how do I effectively go about getting in front of them? Is that by retweeting something that they put out? Is that by sending them an email because I know there's something they could do better, and say, think, hey, this might be really helpful to you? It's like that strategic muscle that you need to use to meet people where they are on their journey to like get their attention, because it's a busy world. People have a million distractions, but you got to intercept people at places of value in their life and like really give first. And so more tactically, that's how I've done. Or when I meet someone, my mom always said growing up, have a thank you note ready. So I always, usually send a thank you note. It's been a little harder with COVID because I'm not meeting people as much in person, but mail, or send cookies to clients, or, people, just like small little touch points that most people don't do. And so tactically, it's really about not just building the relationships, but I think really nurturing and taking care of the people in your world.
Doing your homework and being prepared is the best way to make a good impression when you're meeting someone new for the first time. It's also key to keeping up with people you are already close with and maintaining those relationships. As I say in Building the Business of You, this is how you can plan to add value to your current and potential new contacts. Your intention is to find and cultivate commonality to create an authentic connection. That means building solid rapport and drawing these new connections into your circle. This sounds easy, so what are people getting wrong? I asked Bryan to share his perspective as a millennial business leader.
Well, then where do you feel young professionals and even those who have been out there in the workforce for 10 to 15 years are struggling these days when it comes to formulating these necessary relationships?
Yeah, I think I'll answer it from both directions. I think most people who are older know where they want to go. I think they have a vision, they know what they want. They've been successful in certain ways professionally. Maybe they have a good family, but what's their biggest issue right now is time. So do they really have the time to go out and make these relationships, do all these things when they have being pulled in 14 other directions, right? So that's the hardest, I think, part for them, even though they know how. They just don't have like the mental space, I think, to do it. For young professionals, I think it's a very interesting kind of question, because it's really hard to know who to reach out to and why if you don't really pick a path. And I think some of the hardest things in just starting is like saying, I'm going to set my sales in this direction and that'll lead me to the next. But there's being young and being at our age of digital, there's so much optionality, and that creates really hard decisions. I can go to Israel and work here. I can go to California and work here. I could stay put in DC here. And okay, so it's going to make a decision very difficult, right? So, and understanding why you're actually doing it is important. So I think for younger professionals, it's really hard for younger people to get aligned on where they want to go, why they want to go there, to at least put their stake in the ground and kind of follow that direction. And I think the more you can equip someone younger with the toolkit to be able to pick a lane and understand the purpose about who they are, the better, so they can at least start getting closer to alignment in a way that I think I have slowly been able to do over the last 10 years. That it's taken a lot of time and just put myself out there in a lot of uncomfortable situations. So that's what I would say to the younger audience who you deeply care about.
So, what myths and misconceptions do you feel exist?
Yeah.
Particularly for those, again, those are young and even older when it comes to building that village.
Yeah. I think building relations. So, sure. On that point on LinkedIn, I think LinkedIn's a very powerful tool when used correctly. I think it can be very personal. I think you need to know, again, why are you reaching out to someone? Is it just to add a follower or connection to your inbox, or is it to intentionally get in touch with someone? I built probably some of my best relationships off of LinkedIn because there's a very clear purpose and tailored message to them because I wanted to talk to them.
So.
I think many people underestimate how hard it is to build a really authentic relationship. And then once they do have an initial touch point, I think they don't understand the questions to ask when they have that touch point. They don't know how to, after that touch point, show up and be valuable in that person's life based on the questions they ask, which usually give them the answers. And then they don't know how to extend and build out the relationship from there. All right.
So they don't do their homework, is what you're saying.
They don't do their homework at the beginning, and then they don't understand the follow up and the follow through that's required to maintain it. So yeah, they don't. It's really hard.
And how would you recommend people go about doing that homework and thinking through that follow up so that they understand that other person's needs and kind of their journey, so they can deliver value along the way?
I think that comes through in preparation and questions that you ask along the way. You need to know where you want to go first. You have to be selfish in this. And like when I say, and I don't say I'm a selfish person, I think I'm pretty selfless, but selfish and staying true to my direction and where I want to go. So I think people who are younger, they really need to understand what's something I really want to do for myself, and what am I going to be relentless to get there? So if I've identified 10 people who can help me on that journey, well, I should probably do my research about them and figure out questions about them, because if they're the people who are going to help me, I need to show care about who these people are, and should probably go about befriending them and building a long-term relationship, because, it sounds manipulative. I'm not trying to come across like that, but it's time is valuable, and you should spend it with the people who you can help and who can help you. And there's some spontaneity there for sure, but I just think most people don't know where they're going. So then how can you prepare the right questions? And if you prepare the right questions, usually you'll get answers that you should think about after. They're very tailored. Or maybe you should send a follow-up. You send, hey, a book or an article to this person after and say, I thought you might like this because you mentioned to me that you were trying to figure out a better hiring process internally, and I just came across this. And what are the little tailored nuggets that you can send to people to say, I'm paying attention to you, not just because you're impressive on paper. And people take note of that because so few people do it. And then, and they're more inclined to probably help you, or they probably see you as someone that can help them. And you build a trusting relationship where you're not keeping score anymore, because it's you trust the person. I think LinkedIn's a very powerful tool when used correctly. I think it can be very personal. I think you need to know, again, why are you reaching out to someone? Is it just to add a follower or connection to your inbox, or is it to intentionally get in touch with someone? I built probably some of my best relationships off of LinkedIn because there's a very clear purpose and tailored message to them because I wanted to talk to them.
I think that's great advice. All of that is really great advice. It shows a level of investment and value exchange, of which many people don't realize is inherently necessary to establish a friendship, which is honestly where you do need to get to at some point for two people to mutually help one another out. So, as someone who is now well-versed on building and scaling communities, what advice do you have to help others create that network around them to achieve their goals and create their own career mashup like you've done yourself?
Yes. Thank you. I think I'll go back to really asking the hard questions earlier in life. Who am I? Where do I want to go? What's meaningful to me personally, professionally? How does that fit together? Like really getting clear on yourself, I think first is, a really important step. And those will help guide intuitively, I think, guide you to be curious about specific things and help you when certain people show up who have done that or been there, you become more aware of that. You can ask better questions. And so I think get clear on at least a roadmap. Doesn't need to be exact, but like just plot out like a vision for your life, as scary as that sounds. And then find and think about the people who have gone down those roads to help you get there, and then how to find them and treat those people with respect, and let the serendipitous nature of the world kind of let ride you on its course, and then trust your internal voice, even when it's hard. Not that I struggle with that too sometimes, but trust that internal voice and let it guide you to the decisions that you're supposed to take. And I think the more you do that, the better off you'll be.
And to close, what's the best work advice you've ever received?
I like the quote, "You never get a second chance to make a first impression." And I think that's a great quote for career, life, everything. And it's true. I don't always make the best first impression, but quote sticks with me, right? And it's something to like come back to when you're meeting someone. And I think that's really important context for this conversation.
I agree. And finally, what's the best way listeners can connect with you?
My email is Bryan, BR with a Y, Bryan at bryanwish.com. Or you can just request me on LinkedIn or Twitter or Instagram. It's just Bryan Wish _.
Thank you so much for being on the show today and sharing not only your career journey, but really the thinking, the approach, the purpose, and the passion to align what it is you want to do with the necessary network to help you get there, but doing it fundamentally in an authentic way.
Well, thanks for the great questions. You were so present and intuitive with everything you asked. It had a lot of good flow, and appreciate everything you're up to. And I can't wait to build our relationship.
Thank you so much.
I find Bryan's journey so inspiring because it's one of passion and purpose. Many people are afraid of taking risks, and that fear keeps them from ever pursuing their dreams. But Bryan was astute about it. He did his research, weighed out the pros and cons, like understanding that the risk in starting a business in his early 20s is lesser than the risk of doing it later. And he followed his internal compass to guide his movement laterally and vertically. He also listened to his gut. As we learned way back in episodes 34 and 35, your gut really is a data bank of all the experiences you've lived through. So going with your gut is a data-driven choice. And the most important thing Bryan's gut told him was the importance of building community and connection. In fact, he ended up making not just one, but many businesses out of it. So one of the most important lessons here is learning to balance selfishness and selflessness. You need to stay true to your path, but you can't get there without a village. So you have to network meaningfully. The ways to determine new opportunities, both in your personal and professional lives, is knowing the key people who have insight into areas you want to explore. Just remember to be authentic, find commonality, and most importantly, do your homework. Because as the 7 Ps tell us, proper planning prevents piss poor performance. Thanks for listening to Strategic Momentum. To connect with Bryan, you can find him on LinkedIn or Twitter at BRYAN Wish, or send him an email at bryan@bryanwish.com. To understand more about the future of work and how to network your way to your path, go to bizofyou.co to get your copy of Building the Business of You. In the book, you'll learn how to employ a dynamic strategic planning process to help you be the CEO of you, while also discovering the compelling stories of other career mashuppers that will inspire you towards action. The book is available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. If you like what you heard in this pod course, please follow the show and share this episode with friends and colleagues. And of course, we always appreciate ratings and reviews. You can also get show notes, links, and more tips and advice from this episode at strategicmomentum.co. I'm Connie Steele, and you've been listening to the Strategic Momentum Podcast.